The Church of Denmark, also known as the Evangelical Lutheran Church, is the established, state-supported church in Denmark. The reigning monarch is the supreme secular authority in the church. As of 1 January 2015, 77.8% of the population of Denmark are members. Their membership is voluntary. Christianity was introduced to Denmark in the 9th century by Ansgar, Archbishop of Hamburg-Bremen. In the 10th century, King Harald Bluetooth became a Christian and began organizing the church, and by the 11th century, Christianity was largely accepted throughout the country. Since the Reformation in Denmark, the church has been Evangelical Lutheran, while retaining much of its pre-Reformation liturgical traditions. The 1849 Constitution of Denmark designated the church the Danish People's Church. Unlike many Protestant churches, the Church of Denmark continues to maintain the historical episcopate. Theological authority is vested in bishops, 10 bishops in mainland Denmark, each overseeing a cathedral, and 1 from Greenland. There is no archbishop. The Bishop of Copenhagen acts as a primus inter pares organization. The Church of Denmark is organized in 11 dioceses, each led by a bishop, including 1 for Greenland. There are no archbishops. The most senior bishop is the Bishop of Copenhagen, currently Peter Skoff Jacobsen. The further subdivision includes 111 deaneries and 2,200 parishes. There are about 2,400 vicars. Parishes. Each parish has a parochial council, elected by church members in 4-year terms. The parochial council leads the practical business of the local church and decides employment of personnel, including the vicar. The vicar is subordinate to the council, except in spiritual matters such as conducting church services and pastoral care. Both parochial councils and vicars are, however, subordinate to bishops. Voluntary congregations. A special feature is the possibility of creating voluntary congregations within the church. These account for a few % of church members. They are voluntary associations, electing their own parochial council and vicar, whom they agree to pay from their own pockets. In return, they are exempt from church tax. The voluntary congregation and its vicar are subordinate to bishops. Members remain full members of the church. Historically, when a parish was dominated by a fundamentalist majority and rector, the liberal minority would often set up a voluntary congregation with their own rector, and vice versa. Today, the voluntary congregations are often a solution for people who find the idea of a free church appealing, but wish to keep some bonds to the church. Parish optionality. Another, less commonly used feature is parish optionality. If a church member is dissatisfied with a particular vicar of his residence parish, he may choose to be served by another vicar who matches better with his Christian views, for example in a neighboring parish. Membership. According to official statistics from January 2015, 77.8% of Danes are members of the Church of Denmark. Membership rates vary from 60.2% in the Diocese of Copenhagen to 86.8% in the Diocese of Viborg. In recent years, the percentage of Danes that are members of the Church has been slowly declining, the most important reasons being immigration from non-Lutheran countries, withdrawal of some members, and a somewhat lower rate of Danish infants being christened. Any person who is baptized into the Church of Denmark automatically becomes a member. Members may renounce the membership and later return if they wish. Excommunication is legally possible but an extraordinarily rare occurrence. Examples include declared Satanists. A church member supporting reincarnation was excommunicated, but the Supreme Court overturned the excommunication in 2005. faith and church attendance. According to the latest inquiry, about 2.4% of church members attend services every week, although on Christmas Eve more than a third of the population attend. However, the church is still widely used for traditional family ceremonies, including christenings and confirmations. In the year 2008, 41% of weddings and 89% funerals were performed in the Church of Denmark, and 71% of adolescents in grades 7 to 8 were confirmed. The level of weekly church attendance is similar to that in Norway and Sweden. According to a 2009 poll, 25% of Danes believe Jesus is the Son of God, and 18% believe he is the Savior of the world. Doctrine. The Church is aimed at having a wide acceptance of theological views, as long as they agree with the official symbolic books as stipulated in the Danish Code of 1683. These are the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Athanasian Creed, the Augsburg Confession, Luther's Small Catechism. Revised versions of the Old and New Testament were authorized by the Queen in 1992. A revised hymn book was authorized in 2003. Both the Bible translations and the hymn book implied widespread public and theological debate. Historically, there is a contrast between a liberal current inspired by NFS, Grundtvig, and more strict, pietist Bible fundamentalist movements. These tensions have sometimes threatened to divide the Church. Tidevov is a minor fraction based on a strict Lutheranism and anti-modern, national conservative views. The Church of Denmark is member of the Porvoo Communion between Lutheran and Anglican churches. Liturgy. The communion service includes 3 readings from the Bible, a chapter from one of the Gospels, from one of the epistles, or another part of the New Testament, and, since 1992, from the Old Testament. Texts are picked from an official list following the church year. Some liturgical features have a fixed content but are free to the form. This accounts for the common prayer following the sermon, where the priest is obliged to mention the royal house. Some will simply mention the Queen and all her house, whereas others will list all members of the royal house by name and title. The sermon, as in other Protestant churches, is a central part of the service. The priest takes a starting point in the text of that Sunday, but is free to form a personal message of it. At special occasions, even non-priests may be allowed to preach. Hymns are also very central. In contrast to Roman Catholic and Anglican churches, Danish congregations sit while singing and stand while listening to Bible readings. As in other Lutheran churches, the Church of Denmark recognizes only 2 sacraments, baptism and the Lord's Supper. These are usually included in the communion service. Formerly, individual or shared confession was a condition to receive the Lord's Supper. An official confession ritual still exists but is now used very rarely. There are also official rituals for confirmation, wedding, blessing of a civil wedding and funerals. Emergency baptism may be performed by any Christian if necessary, and later the child will then be produced in church. Church and State. As supreme authority of the Church of Denmark, the monarch must be a member. This applies to the royal princes and princesses as well, but does not apply to the spouses. Traditionally, though, every foreigner who has become a member of the royal family has converted or become a member of the Church as a result. The Prince Consort Henrik converted from Catholicism before marrying the Queen in 1968. And Mary Donaldson also converted from Presbyterianism before marrying Crown Prince Frederik in 2004. Freedom of religion. With the Reformation in Denmark in 1536, Lutheran Christianity was established as the state religion. For the next century, in a time when religious wars swept Europe, harsh persecution of other faiths followed. Exceptions were granted only to foreign diplomats. For at least a period in the 16th century, small circles of clandestine Catholicism prevail. From 1683, Roman Catholic, Reformed and Jewish congregations were allowed in the new town of Fredericia, the latter two also in Copenhagen. Non-Lutherans were also allowed in Fredrikstad and on Nordstrand in Schleswig and in Glückstadt in Holstein. With the Constitution of 1849, freedom of religion was introduced in Denmark, but Lutheranism remained the state church. Recognized and approved religions. A religious community does not need any state approval in order to enjoy the freedom of religion granted by the Constitution. However, state-approved congregations enjoy several privileges. They may conduct legal weddings, establish own cemeteries, get residence permits for foreign priests, are exempt from corporate and property tax, may apply for means from the state lottery fund, and members may tax-deduct membership fees and presents to the congregation. Additionally, those congregations recognized by royal decree before 1970 may name and baptize children with legal effect, keep their own church registers and transcribe certificates on the basis of such registers. This legal distinction between recognized and approved communities remains, but is mainly a historical one. Communities recognized before 1970 includes only 8 well-established Christian communities as well as 1 Jewish community. From 1970 until the 1990s, only a few more Christian congregations were approved, but since 1998, a much more liberal practice has ensued. Since then, a board of independent experts decide about approval of new religious communities. The board includes professors of law, religious studies and theology and works under the Ministry of Justice, deliberately separate from the Ministry of Ecclesiastical Affairs. It merely investigates whether the organization fulfills basic definitions, such as having a doctrine, creed and cult, in order to be called a congregation of faith. In 2003, the approval of the aforesaid religion caused some public debate. Lack of central authority. The Church is in practice barred from having official positions in political or other matters, since it has no central bodies that could define such stances, nor a spiritual leader, nor a central assembly or synod. Bishops have the last say on doctrinal questions within the respective dioceses. The Queen and Parliament are the central bodies, but they usually keep to administrative matters and abstain from interfering with spiritual questions. Church laws are rarely changed, and, when it happens, only administrative matters are affected. Firstly, these principles are generally believed to ensure a non-sectarian, tolerant church where parishioners and priests enjoy a high degree of freedom to practice their own interpretation of Lutheran Christianity. Secondly, many Danish politicians and theologians claim that only this church-state model will ensure the division of politics and religion. Since the Church cannot interfere with political matters or even claim to speak with one voice on behalf of its members, they frequently discourage the term state church and argue it is, as its name states, the people's church. Article 66 of the Danish Constitution stipulates a church ordinance shall be laid down by law. This promissory clause dates back from the first constitution of 1849 but was never put into practice. It was feared that splits could occur if a central authority were created. In very few cases have politicians deviated from the traditional hands-off course in church doctrinal matters. Where they have done so, it has been with the declared aim of preventing a possible split in the church. See the issues of female clergy and same-sex marriage above. Civil registration. The Church of Denmark conducts civil registration of births, deaths, change of name etc. The keeping of such kirkebøger is a centuries-long tradition. dating from when the parish rectors were the only government representatives in rural areas. In 2002-03, the traditional church records were replaced by a new national electronic registration system called person registering. After protests in 2005, the Minister for Education and Ecclesiastical Affairs Bertel Harder announced that people who for various reasons did not want to send their registration forms to the local church office could now send the forms to a central office located in Nykøbing Falster. In 2010, parents' duty to report the birth of their child was abolished. Instead, it was decided that in the future it was the task of the midwives to report all births in Denmark. For the 1st of December 2014, all applications should be submitted in digital form whenever possible. Economic support. Section 4 in the Constitution of Denmark stipulates that the Evangelical Lutheran Church shall be the established Church of Denmark. As such, it shall be supported by the state. On the other hand, Section 68 ensures that citizens are not obliged to pay personal contributions to any religion other than their own. It has been questioned how these two principles can coexist. Non-members do not pay church tax, but an additional state subsidiary accounts for 12% of the church's income. This means every citizen, even a non-member, contributes with an average of 130 kroner annually. In addition, the bishops are high-ranking officials whose salary is fully paid by the state. In return, certain public tasks are carried out by the church, such as conducting vital records registries and managing graveyards, which are open to all denominations. Separation of church and state. The debate about separation of church and state emerges occasionally in Denmark. The current arrangement is supported by most political parties. It has been challenged for decades by the left wing and by atheists, more recently also by some ideological liberals and some members of free churches. Proponents for a separation argue the state church violates equality of religions and the principle of the secular state. Proponents for the current system argue that membership is voluntary, that the existence of a state church has ancient historical roots, and that the church fulfills certain administrative tasks for the state. They also argue it would be difficult to decide whether church-owned real estate should be handed over to the state or not. The former possessions of the Catholic Church were ceded to the Crown at the Reformation in 1536. According to a poll conducted by the free daily Metrox Press in April 2007, 52% wished to split church and state, 30% were against, and 18% undecided. Minister for Education and Ecclesiastical Affairs Bertel Harder spoke out against a split. Church and state will be separated when more than half of the population are no longer members. NFS Grundtvig said so, and I support that. The opposition Social Democrats also argued against a split, but said there should be more equality between denominations, possibly by a state subsidiary paid to other approved religious communities as well. Immigrant groups and the Muslim society are divided on the issue, as some think official Christianity is preferable to a purely secular state. Pure equality of religions exists only in a minority of Western European countries. Besides Denmark, only the Faroe Islands, Iceland, England and Greece have official state churches, while Scotland has an officially recognized national church that is not connected to the state. Spain, Portugal, Italy and Austria have official ties to Catholicism, but these ties do not extend to Catholicism being recognized as the state religion in these countries. Further, there are varying degrees of public funding of the church in Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Norway, Sweden, in most cantons of Switzerland, and in the Alsace-Moselle region of France. Similar Nordic Evangelical Lutheran Churches: Church of Sweden, Svenska kyrkan; Church of Norway, Den norske kirke. National Church of Iceland, Þjóðkirkjan, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland, Suomen Evankelis Luterilainen Kirkko, Church of the Faroe Islands, Fólkakirkjan,